So what is emergency Autoland? Because it's not just autopilot with the fancy name. That's what I thought it was. So the pilots do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they put their oxygen mask on. And then this is kind of where things get complicated. The Autoland system either activates automatically or they activate it.
Welcome to the Aviation Mentors Podcast, the podcast that takes your dreams of flight and turns it into reality.
Sponsored by Strass Financial, financing your flight training.
For pilots, by pilots. I'm Brandon Martini, a commercial pilot and flight instructor.
And I'm Carson Vasquez, I'm a private pilot.
Whether you're a seasoned pilot or beginner with dreams of flight,
Aviation Mentors is your source for expert insights, industry trends, and inspiring stories.
So fasten your seatbelts and prepare for this incredible journey through the skies.
And stay connected with us on social media for exclusive content.
And visit our website at www.aviationmentors.com and let us be your co-pilot on this adventure.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Aviation Mentors Podcast. I'm Carson, and the person that usually does this part is Brandon. He's on vacation with Austin this week, so you have just me. He's actually down in Cabo. He was in New York, so he did a complete opposite. He went to the freezing cold and then to just absolute tropical where they were catching fish. So good for him. I'm glad he's having a good time. But that means I get to do an episode alone. And it's actually totally fine with me because I've been going down a rabbit hole this week and on this topic in particular. And I think I really just need to get it out of my system. So about 10 days ago, as the time of recording, on December 20th, a Beechcraft King Air 200 landed itself at Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport, just outside of Denver. And the cool thing about this was Garmin's emergency Autoland system. This is the first time it's ever been used from start to finish in an actual emergency. The pilots experienced rapid cabin depressurization at about 23,000 feet, but both walked away just fine. And the plane flew again the next day. But here's what makes this kind of more interesting than that. The pilots were conscious the entire time, and they weren't incapacitated, and they chose to let the system land. And the aviation world is really divided on whether that was the right call, especially after the information came out. And we'll get into it a little bit more coming up soon. But I've spent the last week reading into everything I can find on this, and I still don't have a clear answer, which honestly is why I wanted to do this episode. I wanted to talk it out. I wanted to see what everyone thinks. So here's what happened, how the tech works, why people are arguing about it, what it means, and that's what we're covering today. So here's what actually happened. Saturday afternoon, December 20th, the King Air 200, tail number November 479er Bravo Romeo, departed Aspen at 1:43 p.m. It was operated by Buffalo River Aviation out of Arkansas. It was just a repositioning flight. There was no passengers, just two pilots who were just moving the plane to Denver. And they're climbing through 23,000 feet when the cabin rapidly depressurizes. And quick context for anyone who hasn't dealt with this, like myself, I'm a private pilot. I don't fly a pressurized aircraft, so this isn't my world either. But at 23,000 feet, without supplemental oxygen, you have maybe 5 to 10 minutes maximum of useful consciousness before hypoxia takes over. If not sooner, it really depends on your body. But your brain starts starving for oxygen, decision-making degrades, and the dangerous part is that you don't really realize that it's happening. People describe feeling fine, kind of euphoric right before they pass out. I've experienced a tiny bit of that, going up to 12,000 feet. I was just like, oh, this is nice. Everything's cool. But that's how you end up feeling right before you pass out, actually. So the pilots do exactly what they're supposed to do, and they put their oxygen masks on. And then this is kind of where things get complicated. The Autoland system either activates automatically or they activate it. And we'll get into the ambiguity of that in a minute. But what we know is that they let it run, and they monitored it, stayed ready to take over, but they let the whole system fly the approach and land. The ATC recording was pretty interesting because it came out right away because naturally this is the first case of an Autoland actually being used. So around 2:05 p.m., Denver area controllers hear this robotic voice come over the frequency. And it's not one that's ever really been heard before. I mean, we've heard it in tests, but never in real life. And the voice said, November 479er Bravo Romeo, pilot incapacitation 2 miles south of Kilo Bravo Juliet Charlie. Emergency Autoland in 19 minutes on runway 30 right. And the controller comes back and said, I don't know if you can hear me, but cleared to land. I mean, what else are you supposed to say? The computer just told you it's landing the plane. And a flight instructor at the airport, there's a guy named Adam Lindy. He was with a student and caught on the radio, saw the fire trucks rolling, and told his student, hey, you're about to see something pretty cool and historic. So naturally, everyone was listening and everyone was watching right away. And at 2:19 p.m., just 36 minutes after the departure, the King Air touches down on runway 30 right. Both pilots walk off. The videos show them grabbing their bags, totally calm. And then the next morning, the plane flew back to Oklahoma City, back in service. And Garmin confirmed it, and we all knew it. This is the first use of Autoland from start to finish in an actual emergency. So I wanted to get into a little bit more about what the system is, because it's something I heard about when it came out. And, I did some research because pretty cool thing. And, I use AI pretty much every day in my job. And this is a really advanced version. So what is Emergency Autoland? Because it's not just autopilot with the fancy name. That's what I thought it was. Garmin announced it in October of 2019. And the CEO, Cliff Pemble, said, direct quote, "Today, aviation is forever changed as we introduce one of the industry's most significant innovations, the first Autoland system for general aviation aircraft." It's a pretty big claim, but it did win them the Collier Trophy in 2020, and that's basically the Oscar for aviation achievement in America. And as far as what it actually does, when Autoland activates, either you press the big red button on the panel, or it triggers automatically if it detects pilot inactivity or unsafe cabin conditions. And it takes full control. And not partial, there's no in between. It takes full control. It assesses position, fuel, weather, terrain, picks the best airport, factoring in runway length, surface, weather, approach complexity, and distance. It builds a whole flight plan right away, flies it, manages the auto throttle, and it talks to ATC, like you heard with those pre-recorded messages. It lands the plane, it brakes, and it shuts down the engines on the runway. Not as good as to taxi in, but on the runway is pretty good. And zero human input is required, and that's the design. A passenger with no flight training, someone who's never even been in an airplane, can just hit the button and survive, and that's the point. And I wanted to know which aircraft really had it. So I did the deep research, and the first certified aircraft was the Piper M600 SLS. That was in May 2020. It's a single-engine turboprop. Following that was the Cirrus Vision Jet, which is the one that I thought was the first, but not so. But that's been the kind of the most popular one to be marketed as having Autoland. And right after that was the TBM 940. And one more thing that I didn't realize until I dug into this was that Autoland wasn't available on piston aircraft until this year. May 2025, the Cirrus SR series was the first one to have it. So for 5 years, it was a turbine-only kind of thing. And the King Air 200 version came online January 2024. The King Air 350 with the G1000 was certified in August of 2025. So Garmin says over 1,700 aircraft total, not types, just total, now of the system. But until December 20th, none of them ever been really used in an emergency all the way through. You ready for it to get messy? Because here's where it gets a little bit messy. The incapacitation confusion. Because everyone thought right away, because that's what it's recorded to say, that robotic announcement said pilot incapacitation. And no one had the full story yet, so media ran with it. There was headlines everywhere. That was the first thing I saw and made me want to start doing this episode. The plane lands itself after pilot incapacitated. And Buffalo River Aviation, the one running the plane, pushed back right away. And they put a statement saying reports of pilot incapacitation are incorrect and result solely from the Garmin emergency system's automated communication and reporting functions. So the pilots were conscious, they had oxygen on, they're monitoring the system and ready to take over. So the question was, why did they leave it on? And the official explanation came from their CEO, Chris Townsley, and he laid out the reasoning. And to me, I'm not instrument rated yet, so it made some sense, but I definitely want to know where everyone stands on it. The pilots were dealing with IMC. They were in the clouds. They couldn't see out. Mountainous terrain was all around. We're going into Denver. And there was icing, and they didn't know why the cabin depressurized. If it was like a seal failure, structural issue, something bigger that was about to fail. So Townsley said, direct quote, that they exercised conservative judgment under their emergency command authority. And that's in the FAR-AM, FAR 91.3, that regulation that lets pilots deviate from rules in an emergency and decide to use all available tools rather than add variables to an already bad situation. And that's the company's position. But there's one part that I can't verify just yet because this is so new, and I want to be transparent here. There's another account floating around, post on Vans Air Force, which is a pilot forum, claim that someone monitoring Denver International heard the King Air pilots say that Autoland activated accidentally and they didn't know how to turn it off. Again, I can't verify it, secondhand, anonymous on the internet, and the company directly contradicts it. But it raises some questions that people are just asking. If the pilots were fine, why did they, no radio contact with ATC? Why didn't they just talk everything through normally? And Autoland can be deactivated with the autopilot disconnected. Hopefully every King Air pilot knows where that is, especially one that would need any sort of type rating or training on Autoland system. So I'm not saying that's what happened to them. I'm just saying that there's gaps, and of course there's going to be an FAA investigation, and hopefully that'll fill them a little bit more. But regardless of the exact sequence of events, the aviation world's debating whether this was an appropriate use of the system, especially after it came out that the pilots were conscious and okay the whole time. Especially because, to double down on that, Garmin's own guidance says Autoland is strictly for emergency use only, designed for when pilots are incapacitated or unable to fly. So if you're conscious with oxygen on, are you unable to fly? The King Air pilots train for depressurization. Anyone that has a pressurized aircraft does, and you have to be qualified to do it. It's a known emergency, though. So the argument is, shouldn't professionals handle this manually? And someone that was on AvWeb, put it this way: accepting and normalizing its use in emergency or abnormal operating conditions that should be well within the pilot's capability and training doesn't seem like an appropriate use of the technology. And I'm going to take a little bit of a stance here that I do agree with that. Obviously, you're in an emergency, you don't know what's going on, so anything can happen, don't take me wrong there. But you are putting in another risk factor of, while the system is great, and it's been tested, and it's been proven to work, it's never been proven to work in an actual emergency. So you are testing the actual system and technology, and you're the test pilot in an emergency. I mean, now we have some good data that, it does work no matter what. So that's fantastic. There hasn't been a failure yet, and hopefully there never will be. But I think it does raise a good question that adding that variable of using the Autoland could mix things up a little bit more than they should have been. But I understand the pilot's point of view as well, so can't take too much of a stance.
You know what time it is, Carson?
Time is it, Brandon?
It's time to talk about one of our favorite companies.
Which company would that be?
Aviation Mentors is excited to be sponsored by the one and only Stratus Financial, dedicated to supporting the next generation of future aviators.
Stratus Financial really understands the financial challenges that students face in pursuing their aviation dreams. That's why they offer student loans specifically tailored to aspiring pilots.
With competitive rates and flexible repayment plans, Stratus Financial helps take your aviation education to new heights.
So go visit their website today at www.stratus.finance. Just to be clear, that is not .com, it's .finance. And embark on your journey towards a sky full of possibilities.
Carson, it's time to get back to what we do best.
The show. But then there's a little bit of criticism on how Autoland actually handled the specific situation. So looking at the ADS-B data, the system held 18,000 feet for about 10 minutes crossing the mountains with the depressurized cabin. They departed Aspen heading east, but west and northeast, there was descending terrain. So they could have turned around, gone down 12,000 feet, 10,000 feet fast, and reduced the hypoxia exposure and just, had a normal, non-pressurized flight. But instead, Autoland picked Kilo Bravo Juliet Charlie to the east, which meant crossing the Continental Divide at altitude before descending. And one pilot analyzing it noted that the system doesn't really differentiate between emergency types. It optimized for landing, not for getting low fast in a depressurization scenario. And I think it's a legitimate design question, not really a flaw, but a trade-off. At the end of the day, the point is to land and land safely. So if that airport was just safer to land at, go land there. And that's what the system thinks. But the counter argument is, put yourself in that cockpit. You're at 23,000 feet. You may have already been hypoxic before the mask went on. You don't know that. The cabin failed for unknown reasons. In the clouds, icing, mountains you can't see. And you have a system that's designed and certified to handle exactly this. So why wouldn't you use it? And someone made a point that I keep coming back to, is that there's a convincing argument that the crew was still incapacitated. The cause may not be oxygen related, could have been fear or negative training. And I think it's harsh framing, but stress and cognitive overload are a real issue. And not everyone processes emergencies the same way. That's why we're trained on how to handle an emergency and step-by-step format, but everything's a little bit different, right? Honestly, I don't really have a position on whether it's the correct use of the system. Nothing firm, especially not yet. I can see the argument that trained pilots should fly the plane. And I can also see that a situation with a lot of unknowns, using the technology that's there for that reason is not unreasonable. But what I find more interesting is that we don't have clear guidance on this. And I kind of get it because it hasn't happened before. Garmin says it's for incapacitation, but incapacitation isn't a binary yes or no. There's a spectrum between fully capable and conscious and unconscious and on the floor. So where's the line? And I think that's what the FAA investigation might clarify, because they're obviously looking into it, and NTSB is going to collect their information too. But setting aside the should they have and should they not have debate, something really significant happened on December 20th. An autonomous system landed an aircraft in a real emergency with real weather, real terrain, and real lives, and it worked. And most GA flying is single pilot. If that pilot has a heart attack, a stroke, whatever, the pilot and the passengers are usually done. Unless someone on board can fly, you're probably going to go down, right? But Autoland really changes that math. Your spouse, your kid, your business partner, anyone with zero training can push the button and have a real shot at survival. And that's something that did not exist until 2019. Worst case scenario, they would have to figure out how to talk on the radio, have to talk to ATC, and while undergoing some real fear, have to figure out how to land the plane with the instructions. And Garmin's Phil Straub said that in the 2019 launch, it's about protecting the most valuable contents in and around the aircraft, children, family, and friends. Up until now, I think it's really just been marketing, especially with the big push from Cirrus on their Vision Jet and now the SR series, is that, I always thought it was just marketing. I was like, oh, cool. It's another feature, another thing we're not going to use. But I don't think it's just marketing now. We've seen it really work. So I'd be surprised if their sales don't go through the roof now. I think this is the best press they possibly could have gotten, is that their feature that they've been selling for years really works. And there's another random detail, because I, getting sidetracked, something I found interesting. The Rocky Mountain Metropolitan is where this landed. And it's not just a quiet strip. The FAA memo from June 2025, it leads the entire national airspace system in potentially significant events. Runway incursions, airborne incidents, more than any other airport in the country. There's a mix of traffic, trainers, corporate jets, and a complex layout in the Denver area space. So it's not an easy airport. It's a pretty hard airport. So Autoland's first real-world test wasn't at just a sleepy, regional field in the middle of nowhere. It was at a pretty challenging airport, and it nailed it. And the bigger system question, because I love thinking about systems, anyone who knows me, is something I keep thinking about. And aviation automation has been increasing for decades. Autopilot, auto throttle, flight management systems. But the model's always been automation assists and the pilot commands. The human's in charge and the computer helps. And Autoland completely inverts that. Well, it's running the system commands and the pilot monitors if they can, and the human becomes the backup, if there is a backup at all. And that's a really fundamental shift. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I genuinely don't know, but it's different for sure. We have talked a lot about aviation having automation in the cockpit and what it can mean for replacing pilots and how that timeline is probably far out. But I think this could be a step towards moving it up. But, again, I genuinely don't know. Now we have to figure out where it fits. Where do you hand over the control? What does incapacitated mean? And do we train pilots to use this as a tool or purely a last resort? And these kind of questions didn't have urgency before, but now they do. I think now anyone who is one of those 1,700 owners of an airplane that has this wants to know when they can use it, when they should use it, when they can get through 91.3 and use any tool available. So now we really need those questions, and we really need those answers. But again, guys, December 20th, 2025, the King Air lands itself in Colorado, 2 pilots aboard, conscious but facing a pretty bad situation, with a lot of unknowns, and they let the computer do the work. And was it the right call? I don't think anyone really knows yet, including probably the pilots themselves. Yeah, I guarantee they're still thinking about it. But we've proven now that the technology works. Now we want to find out the harder part, when and where to use it, right? We always need to put every thought into a funnel and get down to the end result. And I think that's going to be a pretty ongoing conversation. This incident, though, is really going to shape it. So we'll link some resources in the show notes if you guys want to dig any deeper, some FAA docs, Garmin statements, and some of the pilot forum discussions, because obviously everyone's talking about it, especially me. I love it. So there's going to be some pretty cool stuff that's going to come out of this. I have a hunch on that, though. Anyway, everybody, if you'd like to reach out to either me or my non-existent today co-host, Brandon Martini, you can reach us at our emails, carson@aviationmentors.com or brandon@aviationmentors.com, or our wonderful producer, Mark, at producer@aviationmentors.com. You can find us our LinkedIn handles. I'm the very handsome guy, Carson Vasquez, who just got a nice little promotion, Employee of the Year. Just a little humble brag at the end, right? And more importantly, though, than any of that is spreading the word on aviation, getting more people the aviation bug. So don't forget to hit like, follow, subscribe on whatever streaming platform you're listening to. Or if you're listening to us on YouTube and watching us, you might see something a little bit cooler today. I got the cameras working. We finally have 4K, and we have lighting, and more upgrades to come in 2026. Really excited for it. But Happy New Year, everyone. Hope you had a great Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and a very Happy New Year. New year, new us, or I think more importantly, the same us, and we're just getting better every year. As a wrap up for the day, remember, we're here to guide you in your aviation journey. So fly safe and enjoy the ride.